a strong retaliation to Hamas's brutal attack against Tel Aviv, the Israel Defense Forces on Monday struck the Hamas compound in Rafah, eliminating legitimate targets in the region for a long time. The IDF has successfully eliminated the Hamas Chief of Staff in Judea and Samaria and an additional senior Hamas official. The retaliatory strikes came after the Hamas terrorists backed by Iran launched a barrage of strikes at Tel Aviv, sounding sirens in the Israeli city for the first time in months. Informing about the attack, IDF stated that a Hamas rocket launcher fired 8 projectiles from the area of Rafah towards central Israel, prompting the Israel Air Force to strike the rocket launcher. Pertinently, the attack came as humanitarian aid was being supplied to the civilians taking shelter in Gaza.
Last night, the IDF thwarted 2 rocket launchers aimed at Kerem Shalom humanitarian crossing. Throughout the day, we facilitate the entry of over 100 humanitarian aid trucks into southern Gaza through that same crossing. This is just a part of hundreds of aid trucks going into Gaza through additional crossings today. What was Hamas doing at that same time? Hamas launched a barrage of rockets towards central Israel. Millions of civilians in Tel Aviv, Herzliya, and other cities had to run to shelter as Hamas fired rockets. It has been almost 8 months of war, and each side still has the same intentions. Hamas still holds 125 hostages. Hamas still targets as many civilians as possible with no care for the people in Gaza. We are still doing everything possible to facilitate the entry of aid into Gaza for the people of Gaza. The IDF is fighting Hamas, not the people of Gaza.
The 2 Hamas terrorists who were eliminated in the Israeli strikes were Yassin Rabia and Khalid Nagar. As per the Israeli military, Rabia was the key manager of the entirety of Hamas's terrorist activity in Judea and Samaria, transferring funds to terrorist targets and planning Hamas terrorist attacks. While Khalid Nagar, a senior Hamas official in Judea and Samaria headquarters, monitored shooting attacks and other terrorist activities in Judea and Samaria. Both the eliminated terrorists taking shield in Rafah orchestrated attacks against Israel in which several IDF soldiers were killed. The unprecedented Hamas attack against Israel on Sunday, being called the biggest missile strike in months, came as the Israeli forces were handling the supply of humanitarian aid to Rafah for the civilians taking shelter in the southern Gaza city. IDF stated that 8 projectiles were identified crossing from the area of Rafah, of which several were intercepted. No casualties were reported. However, the Israeli military stated that it was aware of the report that a number of civilians were harmed in its retaliatory strikes, adding that a probe into the matter was underway. Justifying the act of terror, the Hamas Al-Qassam Brigades, the terrorist group's Telegram channel, stated that the rockets were launched in response to Zionist massacres against civilians. The Iran-backed militant group has triggered the war in the Middle East after it brutally attacked Israeli soil on October 7 last year, killing about 1,200 civilians while taking away hundreds of hostages. Hamas is still holding about 100 hostages and the remains of around 30 others after most of the rest were released during a ceasefire last year.